I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to another Friday edition of Conversations with Al McFarlane. This session we call the Healing Circle, and it reflects the work that we're doing with the wonderful leadership team over at Brackens Institute. Brackens is the home and base for the African American Child Wellness Institute. And the Institute is undertaking a project to provide crisis counseling to children and families during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. And more than anything else, from my point of view, the initiative attempts to familiarize us to desensitize us to the stigma associated with understanding and speaking about mental health, our health and our mind, how we see this question of mental health differently in ways that have us not immobilized and not afraid to both reveal and talk and share and seek and move towards health and healing. So I'm pleased to have two of the partners in the African American Child Wellness Institute Crisis Counseling Initiative on this call today. And we're going to talk about what they're doing, their backgrounds, what they're doing as counselors in this program to address the question of crisis brought on by COVID-19. Shirlynn LaChapelle is a regular with me here and a elder leader in community, a warrior, a fierce organizer and entrepreneur who's completing her work as a nurse practitioner. I think that's the right term, isn't it? And I understand that to be basically, unmute Shirlynn, I understand nurse practitioner to be almost a doctor or the same thing or close to a doctor, but you can explain that. I'm a layman.
Okay, well, I'm already a nurse practitioner,
but in a new field.
Yeah, so this is another degree in psychiatric and mental health, my new focus in life.
Super.
This is the last internship.
There we go. Okay, and then Yolonde Adams-Lee. And Yolonde, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because among other things, as a therapist, you've been instrumental in advancing this notion out of which we've named the program, and that is the Healing Circle, and embracing cultural wisdom, legacy knowledge, and approaches that more properly allow us to access the knowledge of body, spirit, and mind in moving towards sustainability and prosperity as human beings, solving problems. Yolonde, good afternoon, and thank you again for being here.
Good afternoon, Mr. McFarlane, and thank you so much. I'm humbled to be among such great wisdom and great elders of our community, and I'm very humbled and honored to be able to share with you all today. As Shirlynn talked about, and as you alluded to, I have worked in and for the mental health field for almost 30 years now. I can't believe it. But I have a master's in professional counseling and a master's in addiction counseling. And as I know personally, as well as professionally, one of both my professional involvement as well as my personal commitment to my own family and community. I grew up part of the time, I'm part Cherokee Indian, and grew up part of my development was on the reservation in Oklahoma with my grandmother and great grandmother. And many of my grandmother's siblings, there were 12 of them, had some form of mental illness. And as we know, as being both African American and Native American, mental health has had an awful stigma of shame in our community. We would much rather be considered, an addict or have a drinking problem than to be diagnosed and or considered with clinical depression. So because I grew up watching, many of the barriers that impact our communities and paralyze us for being our best selves, as you noted. It's not about being partially whole. We want the whole pie. And so when we grow up with those traumas, healing circles is definitely a labor of love around engaging in what we do best. We don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we grew up with our elders because we had no one else to talk to, and neither did they. So they had the Elders Council, which is a part of the circle, both in the African American and the Native American communities. The elders came together over a meal, either came together and they parlayed, as my daddy says, parlayed together about what's going on in our community, whether it was health, whether it was corrections, whether it was finances, the children, etc. And so healing circles is a labor of love and a compilation, if you will, of all of the above. How can we peel back the onion, peel back all these years of trauma that our elders in our community has withstood, the sustainability and the perseverance? We're limping a bit, but we still have moved forward. And so when we inherit of trauma, and I do believe that's a part of our DNA, and Shirlynn can speak more biologically to that, as she is our medical expert. However, whatever that mother and that father have incurred in their DNA, they do pass that on down through their children. We watch, we are modeled, we're coached by and from our grandparents, our parents, all of our community. So the circle brings together those tough conversations that include and inform and educate. And ultimately, as we look at the African American wellness model, that is to come full circle with holistic solutions and healing. And one of those components is, how do we now, on top of everything else that our communities have endured, on top of George Floyd, which we've seen that go from lynching down in Mississippi, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and in Duluth, and now that lynching looks like George Floyd. That's the same behavior. So we endure that. We internalize all of those things. Our children, witness violence in school and out of school. So internally and externally, they are experiencing these things. So these layers of trauma we are enduring, and we want to, now we have COVID, yet another trauma on top of all of these other things. We in Minnesota are still number 3 in the nation around diabetes and fetal alcohol syndrome and heart heart conditions and cancer. And on top of all of these health disparities, now we add another layer, which is COVID, which also has some contributions or characteristics of being placed in solitary confinement. So all these things are triggering our community, and that's what we're doing with our collaborative. We are hopefully calling in our folks, and we are saying, come to a place where you're safe, where you will, get the education as well as the medical providers to help you, and then the emotional support and healing that is necessary for us as a people to be whole.
Walk me through how the healing circle works, and if you don't mind, I'll be average Joe John Q, meaning average Al McFarlane, who's just an ordinary guy that wants to get along every day. And I come across some information that says there's some people talking about COVID, and I'm kind of unaware, generally aware I'm aware that there's this bombardment of information about COVID-19 that it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. I got to pay my rent. I got to get the bus to go to work, but I got to get the kids to school. And I got a lot of stuff in my life, and I got to also make sure that I don't act a certain way when I'm around people downtown, because I don't want them to confuse me with somebody else, that they'll come and bum rush me and put me in jail because they misread my intent, because I was wearing this or wearing that. But I want to be a decent guy, just an ordinary guy. And I get invited to a healing circle put on by the African American Child Wellness Institute. I show up, what happens? And I'm gonna be that person. Let's make this happen with you and Shirlynn as members of the team. And I'll represent myself plus 20 more. And let's give a demonstration of how this thing works.
Absolutely.
Okay, can I answer that, Yolonde?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
We say it's African American Children Wellness, but we're all children.
That's right.
And we don't stop at the child.
That's right.
Because inside of us are all injured, damaged children. As Yolonde was saying, the historical damage that continues to go on even now with these slights and these microaggressions that every day we have to deal with, and still act like nothing's going on, because it's not acceptable for saying, you injured me, you stabbed me in the heart, what you did hurt me to the core. So we have to put on that face that's non-threatening, pretend everything's all right, even though we're dying inside. Again, we die regularly, but we are resilient people. But now the time has come where it has to stop. We're humans. We've taken all that we can take, and we're not taking anymore. What the healing circle does, we all recognize that we're all injured, we're all damaged. And guess what? When you come with your pain, we understand you. You don't have to define what you say. Sometimes I'm just messed up. I'm just all messed up. You don't know. I said, yeah, I know what you mean, because I feel that way too. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you feel all messed up and you're trying to talk to a therapist and they say, well, exactly, what does that mean? What does all messed up mean? You're done right there. You're done. You're ready to leave. I barely have myself in here. I had to make myself come, and now you want me to educate you? I'm looking for help. I'm not here to help you. So
and the question is not what happened. The question, Mr. McFarlane, is not what, to piggyback on what Shirlynn said, mm-hmm. The question is never what's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. The question is what happened to you.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
What happened to you today that brought you to us? What happened? And so it just as you said a few moments ago, it's an opportunity for us to tell our story in a safe place. There's no expectation of what you need to deal with today. The circle is that safe place and the protective arm of all of us, because there's no big I and little you. We're all in the same place.
We are we.
That's right. We are all impacted by the COVID virus.
Let me make this real. Let me make it real. And this is not me representing anybody but me. So last night I pulled up at a place that I go to regularly, and I was about to get out of my car. And then somebody that I knew came up, and I was on the phone, and I had my mask in the car, but my friend didn't have a mask on, hit the window. And roll the window down. My first reaction is, "Where's your mask at?" I can't roll my window down, but I know you. And he just tapped, and so I held my mask up, I'm still talking on the phone. And then he said, so he stepped back. I rolled the window down a little bit. He said, "Brother, don't park here. They're getting ready to start shooting.
Okay.
You need to move." I said, "Thank you, brother." I rolled the window up and drove on down the street.
Wow.
That's last night.
Right.
Yes, not about what's wrong with you, what happened. That's what happened.
This is what's
That happened to me last night. So what do you do with that? And so, and it happened in the context of me being aware of COVID-19.
There you go.
Right? I had my mask on. This brother didn't have his mask on. But what he did have was a commitment enough to come to me and knock on my door and say, brother, don't get killed because there's going to be gunfire here in a minute. It's about to happen.
Right.
I don't think it did happen, but that it could have happened. You know,
that it could.
I'm grateful and I'm thankful that he had the courage to at least come in the concern to say, brother, don't park here. This stuff's about to happen in a minute, and you don't need to be here.
Yes.
Amen. That's a blessing.
What do you do about that? You know,
concern.
And I tell the person that I'm talking to that a guy just knocked on my window and asked me to leave, told me to leave because they're about to start shooting. And so the person I was talking to said, oh, what, shooting debris, shooting up? I said, no, shooting bullets. And well, let me let you take care. I said, no, don't hang up because I want to make sure I get around the corner. In case I don't, you got to call my wife and let her know what happened, right?
Come on.
And so how do you live with that? And so I get around the corner and then I call home and tell my wife just what I just heard because it's incredible. You know, I'm thinking about, so what's going to happen? So people are lined up, ready to do a shootout?
Yes.
What do we do with that? What do we do with that?
The word
That's a wonderful question. Go ahead, Shirlynn, you take it.
The word passes through the community, so people know that something's about to happen. You know, so so-and-so is going over there to get revenge on so-and-so, and they know they come out of that corner store at a certain time, so they're going to be waiting on them. You know, just like in school, when you were going to get jumped on and you were the last to know, but everybody else was waiting on the fight to happen. What would be good, and we now know, I carry a bunch of masks in my car, a couple boxes. And when I see somebody without a mask, I probably would have grabbed one of my extras about those surgical masks and said, here you go, brother. I want to protect your life. Now, what you got to say, you know, and thank them profusely. But, you know, the more, you know, number one, that was caring for you as a human being and as a fellow brother of our cultural background. If we could get our people to love themselves, you know, the self-hatred that has been forced on us from birth to infinity, we hear all these negative messages about how we're barely human, we're not this. Nothing good is put on TV. Rarely. But you let something happen that's microscopic, it's blown up into the worst thing that could ever happen, and we did it. It's important that new messages are broadcast. It's important that when we see these young people on the street hanging around, that instead of rushing in the store to get away from them, we speak to them and say, hey, how you doing? You know, I was just thinking about you while I was in the store. And I was thinking, boy, you look like you got a lot going on in your life. You look a little stressed. You know, we do have healing circles, and all you have to do is a Zoom thing, and we need to get cards made up, you know, when we're going out of cover somewhere. And I know you're going through a lot. I know people aren't respecting you like you should be. And I know you have a lot to offer that you probably don't even know is inside of you. But every Friday at this time, we're going to be having healing circles with Elle McFarlane, Insight News, on a Zoom. You can do it from your phone. And we'd like to hear from you what you're going through. And we'd like to provide you with some ideas to help you to cope with how tough this life is. I mean, that's just an idea I have on how to reach some of them, because when we go to the store, they're usually outside the store. What do you say, Yolonde?
I'd like to jump in here and say, you know, in the moment, what happened, what occurred to me, what is I would want to know, in that I want to know right now in the moment, how are you?
Yeah.
Mr. McFarlane, because in that moment you had two critical concerns, two critical issues. And it's not even reasonable for someone to ask you to choose which one you're gonna go through right now, because you were experiencing both. You were experiencing in the preemption of that conversation, young man, I need for you to have, where's your mask, right? Because you want to be safe and to protect yourself from this invisible, ongoing option of, or not option, but exposure to this death. But in that moment, I love what you said, and I want to name that because that's what we do in the circle. He chose not to be offended. He chose what's in him, the goodness in him. He chose to pull on that out of his selflessness and say to you, I want to protect you. I want you to know that I want you to be safe. So he chose outside of himself to protect you. And then you were able to go on the other side of that and come full circle. And what happened in that moment, what happened to you in that moment was a both and. You were protected from somebody that looked like you, and somebody that was also experienced a trauma, but he chose, instead of being selfish, which is what we are, all we hear about is what we don't do right. But what he chose to do, he did a great thing. And so in that moment, you were able to hold, right? You were able to hold and move past the immediate trauma and take reflection of and share with others. Guess what? And that's what the circle is about. You you got on the phone, you called somebody, and you had a conversation with them. That was that is an element of the circle. Then as you move down and you moved into safety, real safe, live safety, you were able to get on the phone and call your wife and have a conversation. That's the circle. That's what the circle is about. Having conversation, reaching out to people that you trust and you respect, and sharing that vulnerable moment and talking through those traumas. That's what happens in the circle.
That's right.
So you asked how I feel. I feel grateful. That's how I feel right now. I feel gratitude for the young man that came up and knocked on my car window, and I'm thankful that he didn't just walk away when I was signaling, we can't talk because you're not wearing a mask, and I got one. And he was kind of insistent, but he did step back, and I did roll the window down. And he said, here's what's going on. And, you don't need to be here. You need to move. And so I heard him, and I believed him, and I acted on that belief, and I'm grateful for that. I think I'm grateful for being able to share this with you right now. And I don't want to put anybody who was involved in a situation in another situation.
Right.
And that's why I've been general in discussing it.
Yes, right.
But somebody's going to hear this and see this, and hopefully it'll be of benefit to somebody else as well. And so, you've kind of addressed my question of how the circle works, and I appreciate that. And we've made it real because I brought something real, and it's not about, as you said, what's wrong with you, is what happened to you.
That's right.
Right. And so how do we take that through everything that we do, and how we engage each other in ways that don't judge, but allow us to interact, examine, and describe in ways that don't stigmatize, right?
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And that others aren't triggered by our experience, because that young man could have, because we don't know what happened to him, but in real time, this was happening to him.
Mhm.
And real talk is, it probably has happened to him more times than he'd like to be able to even share. And so
Mhm.
those things are what drive the symptoms of
Mhm.
our trauma. And so we never know when we're going to be triggered in the moment. Whether someone says something, we encounter a smell, we encounter something that someone else experientially are going through, and it triggers us. And then what happens to us, then we are judged, as you talked about, or you noted, Mr. McFarlane, as being we respond. We're not reacting. We're responding to a perceived harm, because this looks like, feels like, smells like what I experienced 20 years ago. And we get on the job, or we are in the church, or we're in the grocery store, and somebody bumps us or says something to us, a microaggression or whatever, and we respond, and then we're labeled. We're the angry Black man. We're the angry Black woman. They don't listen well, or why do they talk that way, or why they're so suspicious, or why they're so defensive. These are all symptomatic of what we encounter externally from our own traumas that we have no control over. The circle is an opportunity. We share a psychoeducation component about several of these issues that occur to us in our day-to-day living: depression, parenting, incarceration, child protection, finances, all these encounters that we have in our life that we don't ever or rarely have someone that looks like us and experientially understand what we're talking about.
Then I was in a meeting this morning, a Zoom meeting with a group of other colleagues, and one of the things that came out of the meeting was sort of an update, a report on the prevalence of COVID-19 in North Minneapolis. And one of the things that these are not specific numbers, but this is the general number. So I'm not going to I'm going to say for sure that this is not the exact number, but it's an approximation that came up. And a person reported that in the North Minneapolis area, for Black and brown people, they listed the percentage, the high number of people that have been tested, but that among the tested, the infection rate is between 50 and 60%. That's frightening as well. So that's COVID-19. That's in the neighborhood I live in,
That's right.
and we are being tested, and that's great. More need to be tested, but the test results are showing a infection rate probably 2 to 3 times that of our white counterparts. And so how do I ingest and interpret that data? How do I act on that to not only make sure that I do things that follow the protocols to keep me personally and those who I come in contact with safe, that I don't endanger somebody else's life by my negligence or inability or to not follow the protocols. That's one thing. But then how do I step back and look at the institutional and structural nature of this statistic, this experience, and not be angry, not be upset that our community is experiencing this rate of impact in this pandemic? And to say, you know what, not inconsistent with the whole history of efforts to destroy us, our lives, and our ability to be sustained and to be healthy and productive. So how do you wrap your head around that in the community, talk about it, but also not be rattled and immobilized or discouraged?
Shirlynn, you want to take that one?
I'll take that. Just let the dog out. It's hard not to be discouraged, but we have to remember sometimes we may be the lifeline for our community. There was an ad on television and it was right on. It said, we are not, what do they call it? Not first responders, but what they call the people who are out front. But anyway, they said,
Frontline worker.
yeah, we're not frontline workers. We're your last chance. We're,
Wow.
right. We're your last chance at life. Because when you come in here, you have used up everything else, and now you're teetering on death, and we're here trying to save you. And I think our approach needs to be when we see these young people, we already know they're not taking it seriously. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And we know they congregate together because that's what young people do. And again, I want to say to us, let's carry a box of masks on us, so that when we see them, that's a chance for a 5-minute conversation. Brother, sister, I really care about you. And, we're part of a COVID consortium. And many in this community, about 60%, 50 to 60% are testing positive for COVID. And out of that, we don't know how many become very ill and may die. But here's a mask. I really would like it if you would protect yourself and your friends, and you pass the word along that the best way not to get COVID is to wear a mask and not to stand too close together, and not to share cigarettes or anything else, or liquor or anything else together, because it's important not to get it. And I know you may say, I can't breathe behind that mask. I think you can breathe quite well behind this mask versus being in the ER where you can't breathe it on and we're about to stuff a tube down your throat, put you on life support. I think you would really like to breathe behind this mask. And I want you to be safe. I care about you.
The other component that I would like to also interject that on the springboard off what Shirlynn is saying is that we as African Americans are already have health disparities that have, number one, folks have undiagnosed chronic illnesses, and because we have food inequities, we don't know how to, and we can't afford to purchase and prepare foods that would help, would contribute to wholeness and our health. So we have these other components, Al, that we know that we need to get around and get behind the folks in our communities and say, we don't want to change who we are as a people. We want to help and live in a manner that will help our current immune system to be able to sustain this and fight against this invisible killer. And so we can do some of these things externally, but let's change. Let's manage our lifestyle. So let's eat well. Let's get enough rest. So instead of staying out, at the club, I mean, I was 20 once, and so I get it. And I'm not just talking to the young folks. I'm talking to folks that are our age as well. And so let's get enough rest. Let's be thoughtful about what goes in our ear gates and our eye gates, what we are exposing ourselves to. If we're experiencing fear and isolation, reach out. Who can be that person, that go-to person for you, that you can talk about your fears openly with? I recently as well, Mr. McFarlane, had a family member, got a text that a family member, a young person, a child, had tested positive to recently to COVID. And that person, that child, the first thing they thought about, because this is all they heard, is they asked this question, am I going to die? And so we need to be able to have these conversations with family members or with someone we could trust that's going to give them accurate information about what they're dealing with. So these conversations that you're offering us this opportunity and our collaborative to talk about this in a honest and transparent manner, so that people are not getting fake news, half news, hitting it and quitting it. We need to be fully and holistically informed.
Wonderful. And you're introducing a Healing Circles initiative, I believe. Talk about that,
Yes.
if you would.
So the Healing Circle initiative came from my involvement in public health advisory committee. And then I joined a subcommittee called the Green Zones Initiative, and that is green zoning of the North Side. And so what does that mean? Well, we want our homes to be lead free, asbestos free. We want good drinking water. We want access to health care. And so through the Green Zones Initiative, through the city, it drilled down into what is most needed. As a part of that subcommittee, we talked to and gave and stood in the gap for Northsiders and said, we will not stand down, we will not sit down until our community has what we need in order to be able to, go and do at the starting line. We don't want to be behind the starting line. So the Healing Circle initiative came out of those concerns, some of these same concerns that we're talking about now, but from a health perspective of having healthy drinking water, have healthy air, we want bike racks, on the North Side. We want the North Side homes to be livable. We want to be able to know if that we can live in a violence-free community, and understand how to be able to have these services in a thoughtful and respectful way. We don't want the handouts. We want the top of the line quality. And so the Healing Circles is also pairing with that healthy living. Mm-hmm. So food equity, right? And the farming, gardening, and solar panels in our community, on our homes. So that will help us to be from the financial component. If we feel good, if we're living good, that contributes to our health, to healthy living.
Yes, it does.
So that's
Let me ask you one more thing. You mentioned that your grandparents came from Oklahoma with the Cherokee. And as it turns out, I was just talking to a person that I think you probably know a few minutes before our call, Matthew Ramadan. Do you know Matthew Ramadan? Do you know him by any chance?
I don't know him. No, I don't.
He was telling me that his grandfather, and great-grandfather were enrolled in the Cherokee Nation, and they came here from Oklahoma as well. And when they came here, their family name was Miller. I think Wesley Miller was, or Wenzel Miller, and they lived up in the Humboldt Greenway area. They were one of the first Black homeowners up there.
Wow.
And, an in-law of theirs was named, I think, Adair, maybe Cecil Adair.
Oh, I know, yeah.
You know them? So it was just a small world that he and I were talking about, the Black Indians or the Cherokee nations. And then you come on and you remind us about your heritage as well. And I'm really fascinated with that, because you are taking from that lineage and that legacy and your African lineage and legacy and developing an approach to your focus is not medicine, but healing.
Yes.
It's
and wellness.
And wellness, healing and wellness, right? And I think that's really amazing. And Shirlynn, that's how you approach it as well. It takes from all of our and our relationship to the earth and to the
That's right.
plant
That's right.
world. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. That's
We're
right.
spiritual, cultural people, and we have a belief system that goes back before Christianity. I mean, we were at one with the earth, the dirt, the wind, the rain, our environment.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized the importance of that. You know, what do we say? Back in the day in Africa, they talked about the fire god, the this god, the that god. But that's a realization of all of these elements are needed in order for survival. So we recognize the importance of these things. If you don't have rain, there's going to be no crops. You need a little fire to cook some food and to keep warm. But excuse me.
That's fine.
No worries. But with all of those things, it's important that we are the healing circle for our people. We are the instruments. That's what the word I'm looking for. We are the instruments to bring them in and allow healing to take place. Because the healing is within all of us. If we can just get the hurt and the pain out, if we can just get listened to, then we can find that healing. We can release the pain. Because the pain is what keeps us ill and damaged. It's the pain.
And it comes full circle, and I appreciate you recognizing that, Mr. McFarlane. You know, I grew up at the feet of my great grandparents because there wasn't a doctor to go to. My great grandfather, Amos Jackson, he was the medicine man on the reservation, and he often, as a little child, little bitty guy, I was a toddler, you know, in today's, you know, verbiage, and would take me in the woods and would gather those herbs, healing herbs, and teach me how to prepare. And so as a healer, right, these are the things, these are the gift. This is my inheritance. And I want to, and he shared it with me. This is what he taught me at his feet. You know, and you know, we were doing this, we were a village. You know, Hillary Clinton didn't come up with that. No. Our ancestors did that. Our ancestors taught us about the community, and we healed the community, and everybody came to Papa's house, and they brought whatever concern in the community. If there was a dispute in the community, we didn't need no police. We took care of our own disputes. And so that's what I am asking and moving and wanting to keep alive in our community. We are only 4 generations removed from that. We don't have to throw out the old. We marry the old with the new, and that's what keeps us alive and whole.
I'm going to end it right there. Those are powerful words. Thank you so much, Shirlynn McNeil. Thank you so much, Yolonde Adams-Lee. This is the Healing Circle. Every Friday at 1 o'clock, we'll be having this conversation with team members with the African American Child Wellness Institute. And as Shirlynn said, it's not about it is about the child in all of us. Nurturing, protecting, identifying, elevating, celebrating, healing that child. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.